Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rich, Simple Human. Today we really are talking about some human things, and I am excited to welcome my fantastic guest today, Dr. Nicoleta. She is coming all the way from Switzerland today, and we're going to be diving into faith, shared futures, and the science of economics, finance and faith as well. Wait for it. These are topics that often aren't discussed. And as you know, I love to talk about religion and money, and they are topics that I'm told we should keep away from. So if you don't really want to hear what we've got to say, turn off. If you want to hear what we're going to say, stay tuned. And if you enjoy it, please share it, because that is how the channel grows. Dr. Nico of Switzerland. This is a very exciting conversation because you have just returned from the World Economic Forum in Davos. Welcome back from the wild side. I'm delighted you're here in one piece.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for the invitation. It's really a great honor to be here. And I'm so happy to finally share this topic, because that was a real success. I don't say this often because I'm quite strict with myself when I evaluate this, but the feedback we received from Davos House of God in Davos was simply amazing. Far, far beyond what I expected.
I cannot wait for you to share that. And I hope I gave you the right introduction because you're also an economist and a theologian, and of course the chief exec and founder of Davos House of God. And you know everything there is to know about what was going on when you were there. Dr. Nico, can you just tell us a little bit about how it started, and then we'll move on to the juicy nuggets of what was going on this year?
Yes, I would say it started 27 years ago when I was a PhD student in economics in banking. Awarded a scholarship from the Swiss government to do my PhD in banking at HEC Lausanne. And then I was working on banking transitions and wanted to touch a little bit on money, the history of money, currency in general. And went back to read the foundational writings in the history of economics, thought on money. That means David Hume and forward. And then I realized that these founders of economic thought were actually philosophers, and they wrote more about religion than about money. I found their treatise on the nature of religion, inquiry on the human nature. And I realized that at least in economic studies, in curricula, in economics, we miss a lot of these writings. Actually, we never mentioned them. Even Adam Smith, which is so known, in economics as the founder of economics with his book on the wealth of nations. Actually, his most important thing was the theory of moral sentiments. He considered himself the most important book of his life. But it's never mentioned in economic curricula, and it's not studied. You find it on the philosophy department, not in the economic department. And then I said, I want to work on values and ethics then. And they told me at HEC Lausanne, we don't have that. If you want that, you have to go in the Protestant Faculty of Theology. Next year, they have a chair on ethics and economics. And it's what I did. I switched from being a PhD student in economics in banking and being a student in theology.
Well, what an amazing journey. And I am not an economist or a theologian, but as everybody listening will already know, I am absolutely obsessed with human behaviour. And we can't take apart the sense of faith, religion and spirituality and then understand economic behaviour and financial decision making. They are inextricably linked, which we're going to come on to. Take me now to the journey of starting Davos House of God, because this is not just a one-time annual event. This is a whole series of events, retreats and a movement that is really changing the way people think about behaviour and performance. So over to you.
Thank you. Actually, that goes back to my postdoc at Princeton University, where I was hired to build metrics to evaluate faith-based behavior and motivation and attitudes for employees in the private sector. Because you may know in the United States, there is a law that obliges employers to adapt to the faith of their employee. And that's kind of a legal constraint that employers have to meet. So being able to evaluate this is very important for them. And then, of course, it is not only to comply with the law, but also for output, for the performance, for the well-being of employees, etc. And I realized, in fact, that yes, there is something here that it's completely overlooked. Faith-based motivation and behavior are the more salient people take decisions and employees when they comply with the mission and the task they have at hand. And understanding those faith-based attitudes and behavior, it's paramount if a company wants finally to deliver, and there are the risk of misalignments between employee motivation and the mission and the goals to be reached by the company. And it's necessary to have this. And of course, we can have this logic also at the level of a society. If you are designing public policy for people, but overlooking their faith or religion or spiritual motivations, that means there are needs that will not be met. But also, this faith-based motivation and religion have two impacts, what we call in statistics, as mediators. That means it at a certain point impact the relationship between two different variables. And moderator. That means at a certain point impacts not only the intensity, but the relationship itself. Either it becomes positive or negative. So it has these two very important factors, and it is often overlooked. And I said, no, I need to do something. I started at Princeton by following actually Princeton Wharton Executive Entrepreneurship Program, when I realized that actually I could have a startup doing that, because at Princeton they encourage scholars to have startups out of their research, and that there is something applied that can be very useful for the society here. And then I moved back to Switzerland and again realized how people have a need to talk about God, Lindsay, but they do not have the environment that really they feel comfortable to do that. For me, it's very easy. I'm a scholar in religion and economics. So speaking about religion, it's normal. And as I'm the one opening the topic in a very natural way. People reply openly and positively, say, I'm so happy I could exchange this with you. So these two factors I realized overlooked religion factor in society in general. And the second, it's the hunger of people to talk about this topic and missing an environment where they could do it. And I went to Davos several times, and I invited, actually in my panels, I was invited to build panels, and I always invited faith-based speakers. And at the end of those panels, again, was like 20, 30 people waiting to talk to me. Said, Dr. Nico, I'm so happy you brought speakers speaking about God and about faith and how faith impacts their investment decisions, for example, or their NGO activities. And I said, oh, but for me, it's just natural. But I realized how much was the need in Davos to have a hub where we can speak about religion, about spirituality, and how this should be included in these debates. In a scientific way, that means with measurements and with concrete proposals, because this is also the goal. It's at a certain point to provide protocols and tools and white papers to support decision makers, either in the private or in the public sector, about how these motivations can be better understood and included in the debate.
That's absolutely fantastic. And yes, the hunger people have to talk about these topics, I think, is really there. And when you do start opening the door, people want to talk about it. And then I find what happens, Dr. Nico, is we actually don't have the language or the understanding or the nuance to be able to discuss it without becoming very emotional. And then, of course,
Yes.
it becomes not a discussion, but it becomes sort of an emotional soup. And I think the more we can become well trained and well versed about talking about religion, spirituality and faith in the same way we're becoming much better at talking about our emotions, then we can really use that part of our humanity to counter some of these issues around burnout, failing investment in human capital, retention in the workplace, meeting people's needs, public policy. But we're not there yet. It's still very taboo.
Yes, it is. But that's one of the goals of House of God. So that's why we'll organize retreats, seminars, trainings and workshops. Were two feedbacks that I really received following this Davos House of God, which was really, as I said, thousands of people stepping in and saying, wow, that's amazing. We had, like, for the first appearance, we have 500 registrations, but just like blank, like that, people even didn't know what was about it, but they appreciated very much the topics already. And those who participated, I had two feedbacks: very high quality content I provided. And it's true. And here it's related to your previous comment. I invited experts in their fields that were able to speak from a professional perspective, and also people of faith. That means people that already integrated what means to have faith-based values, and the way they transmitted that, it is exactly with emotions, but in the same time in a very constructive way. So it was very warm. I receive actually daily, but the last comment I received on WhatsApp from one of the speakers said, all the people complain about Davos for being empty, cold, but I do not have this experience of Davos, because in House of God, it was exactly the opposite. And I'm so grateful that you did that. But when I receive this kind of message, I say the goal have been reached. And we have already for the next year, more than 11 panels booked. I stopped to counting after 11. I forgot. We are at 14, 15, but I forgot which ones. But already 11 panels booked.
So the call to action here is, if you are going to be in Davos 2027, I suggest you get your name on the list for Davos House of God, because we may be, the roof may be pushed off at this rate because of the number of people that are desperate to come and have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Can I come back to Davos House of God 2026? Because I too took great delight in not only hearing some of the, I suppose, comedy commentaries on what had been going on, but also I enjoyed a lot of Instagram and LinkedIn clips with people in Davos moaning about how commercialized it felt, and how dry and how it was, completely pointless, and it wasn't how it used to be. That's not been your experience. What happened in Davos House of God this year?
I invited, as I mentioned, people, true spiritual people, very professional. For example, Major. Major, it's the producer of Justin Bieber.
Absolutely.
I know him for a year now. We met in Davos, and we currently on this spiritual thing. And I shared with him the mystical prayer I was taught by the hermits in the Carpathian Mountains when I was a child. It's the Jesus prayer. It's a very old, 2000 years old prayer, but still alive as a practice in Orthodox Christianity. And he confessed to me that he was a cancer survivor, and that experience got him closer to God. And I said, I know a prayer that will really, the goal of this prayer, and as we say in Christian Orthodoxy, it's the union of the human with God. It's really a spiritual union, a mystical union. And we started to pray, and then we continue this. And I myself spend half of my time, mostly the weekends, in retreat in the mountains, in solitude and silence and stillness, if possible, and pray for everyone I meet in my daily life. For everyone. And we developed this relationship. And when I started to plan for Davos House of God 2026, I said, would you dare to come to speak to House of God, but also to launch a podcast, Heart to Heart, where I want to invite people to speak about God, because this is something I really felt people need a place where they can speak from heart to heart about what is more important for them. And he said, yes, I'd come. I couldn't believe it. So I said, okay, let's go. Let's come. Then I invited professors, John C. Evans, the founder of the International Association of AI Ethics, the one who really thought of that. And I discovered a person of faith. Incredible. And when you start to do that and you talk around you, I would like this kind of people. I would say I didn't have to search too much. I would say people would rather come on my way because somebody knew somebody say, oh, I think this person would be good. And it's true. We did like a prep as we did in academic meetings. This is a difference. And that's why it was very different from the others in Davos. People admired the quality content and also the length of discussions. The goal of House of God is to co-create knowledge. You see, this is it. Co-create knowledge. You can't do this in a panel of 20 minutes with 5 speakers where everyone is going to say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Even it's very, very interesting and useful to have this kind of very short interventions. But you can't really create and co-create knowledge and understand what the others think because you need time for that. And I said, in the House of God, we will have a mix. We'll have a academic, scientific type of debates within a business setting, which was WEF. And people were amazed. They wanted to say they wouldn't stop. We couldn't stop at a certain point. And that was so rich. That's the goal. We co-create knowledge because talking for talking, it's not interesting, sincerely. Who has time for that? I don't have time, sincerely. And the people I bring in have not time either. We don't have time to talk. We want to discuss, to learn from each other, co-create knowledge, and produce something that will be concretely helpful, applicable.
Beautiful. That is beautifully said. We want to co-create knowledge. We also want to coexist in community, and we want to be together in this journey. And you and I started at the beginning of our call talking about the importance of community and the importance of spirituality, faith and religion as part of that. We also referenced the work of Dr. Lisa Miller, and as I am an enormous fan, every podcast I talk about her work and how important it is, because without any spiritual dimension in our lives, parts of our brain actually stop working and we're not actually existing as fully human. And there you are, Dr. Nico, explaining how you're co-creating knowledge live at the World Economic Forum. It's not just a boring panel where people are just giving their opinion, but you're sharing, creating information, dissecting, really rethinking something through to make it applicable to this current world problem. Isn't that what Davos was meant to be for?
It started actually from, because it was Professor Schaub was a professor in management, and he started like that. But I think little by little, I want to comment on that. What I think it's important is what is the value we bring. You know, when I did that, okay, I engage in that. I put like everything I could, the best I got after 27 years in academia, but also working with business leaders, because I worked with business leaders in the last years from companies from Silicon Valley, from impact investing. I want to bring the best, but what is that thing that it's missing? And in fact, everybody said, oh, you brought soul to House of God is bringing soul to West. And really, I think that was the most rewarding comment I could get. It well paid off. All the effort was really worth it. And we continue. So yes, it is a community. To everyone I invited in, from speakers to volunteers to everyone, I said, this is not a 1-year event. I want to create a community of thinkers, and we grow and we will spend time together. We will organize travels. The first will be in Romania, a tour in 2027 in the Carpathian Mountains, Delta of Danube and Black Sea. And everyone will be invited to join. Then we will have other events where we spend time together, we learn from each other. And the goal is, for this year, we have more Christian participants with some working on interfaith initiatives. And in the future, little by little, and we have a Chinese actually with Taoism and Confucianism, a lady joining recently. And we will little by little introduce the other faiths, because we need to understand that if we don't do it, I do think that we will, it is proposed things that just do not meet the needs of people. And that's a loss of time. It's not efficient, even from an economic point of view. Why would we work and spend time and energy and knowledge if we produce something that in the end doesn't respond to people's needs?
Absolutely right. And time is of the essence here. It struck me, just to go back to something you said about public policy design. If I asked you to just assess how much time or how much public policy design actually takes account of faith, spirituality and religion currently, do you think? How serious is this?
Zero. No, it's really not. No, it's not. And actually, as I realize that when I'm involved in everything, it's sustainability in local governments, designing public policy for local governments, how to increase sustainability. And I said, yes, but in local settings, which are the most influent organizations? These are religious ones. Wherever you go, either in Switzerland, Africa, or India, whatever, the most grounded, if you want, the most grounded presence, institutional presence, these are religious communities. So how can you design public policy in local governments to increase sustainability, etc., if you do not collaborate with these institutions, which are the most relevant and the most important, and which is already sustainability? It's already one of their goals, you know, and they are doing it before sustainability, because in fact, this is it. Religions are the first institutions that wrote and fostered sustainability and circular economy and well-being and social equality, etc. All it's around this. Actually, you have it in a religious text, and it was implemented by religious communities around the world in a manner or another. And nobody even thought. And I said, it's so obvious. You will save time and money if you stay on the same table with these religious leaders and with the communities and said, we want in this city to have this policy regarding sustainability. How can we make it to be easier adopted by the people? This is what we want. When you make a public policy, you want that people adopt the policy. Otherwise, there's no impact. So how it is easier adopted with the higher impact. And yes, something I said in the panels, there is knowledge. There is so much knowledge in these communities. And I want to bring this knowledge from the bottom to the top. So it can be scaled up. It can be transformed in public policy because local communities, didn't wait it for top-down policy to resolve their problems. They already acted. And some of their solutions are really ingenious. But we don't know them because they are not vocal, or they just don't think that it's possible to be replicated. And this is our duty as scientists, I think. It's to acknowledge there is knowledge there, and we can transform it and scale it up and make it applicable, or at least as a source of inspiration in our settings. It's simple transfer of knowledge that it's so, humanity always did transfer of knowledge.
Given the fact that you've used the words transfer of knowledge, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and ask you about AI, please, because I know that you've talked about AI and ethics, and I know it came up in conversation at Davos this year. Can you tell me a little bit about faith and ethics in AI and the conversations that you saw happening and what you think might be happening in these community conversations moving forwards this year?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. It's so important because, again, I would say when people say AI and faith, what they have together, what is the point? They don't really see the meaning, considering that faiths are very far and it's about spirituality and it's ancient texts. And AI, it's all modern and futurist, etc. But in reality, there is one element that it's the nexus of both, and this is the human being. Both are about the betterment of human being. And if we consider that religions are here from thousands of years, in AI, it's only, if we are generous, from 1950. So I think we should, AI experts should have the humility to say, what says religions about human being? And how we can design an AI that will really support and help human being to flourish. Because in the end, that's the goal. If we agree on the goal, it seems yes, but let's make the hypothesis that this is the goal for everyone. The flourishing of human beings, flourishing of human communities. So how can we discuss that? There's important topics, not only about personal data or security, digital security, which is so critical now, but just considering the identity, what it means to be a human, because now we have a physical identity, we have also a digital identity. And from an anthropological point of view, this is very important because it asks, can we have a human? If we don't, a human, it's body, soul, and mind. Can we have a human if it's only digital, as some speculate now about uploading consciousness, whatever? Even the fact that AI could have consciousness or be a person and so on. I think religions here are very strong in giving, if not the answer, but at least the right framework of analysis. I do think that religions have the right frameworks of analysis. For example, myself, I just had a paper which was accepted for publication. I presented in Oxford in 2024 at the Patristic Conference, where I use patristic anthropology for insights for AI ethics. And just very briefly to tell you, there are two main traits that human beings have that can actually be used as a rule of thumbs for AI ethics. These two traits are freedom. That means humans are free by nature, by creation. These are the only creature in the world, in the universe, that are free, according at least to biblical anthropology, because human was created in the image and the resemblance of God. So it shares two divine traits, and this is freedom. One is freedom, and the other is goodness. It means by nature, human beings are good. Of course, the environment may enhance this trait or mitigate it, but in any case, this is it. So this rule of thumbs in ethics could quite, I would not say easily, but it's not impossible so everything that limits the freedom of human being, and here we can have some flexibilities, but at a certain point, they are thresholds of freedom of human being that should never be broken. And then the goodness. Do we foster virtues and the goodness, or at the contrary, do we foster the hate, the anger, and the vicious behavior like cheating and everything? Because this is done through algorithms quite easy. And we see now, we can see it's very easy on the social platforms. If we have so much anger and so much hate, it's because these two emotions generate lots of clicks and lots of views, and the algorithm, it optimized for more views. So every comment that will bring more views will be put it on top and shown on a more frequent way than a comment that is kind of saying, oh, no, let's calm down the game and let's not go in that. So we can see that there is a bias towards encouraging hate and aggressivity and violence. And that should be, if we follow this anthropology, should not be allowed, because this is against human nature. That means we go against the human nature, which is good.
Well, it's beautifully explained, and it comes up a lot in conversations I have on many of my podcasts, that this cheap dopamine hit of the click for hate, the click because I want to feel something. I feel dead. I don't feel alive. I don't feel purposeful. I don't feel connected. So let me click this because I feel angry. It's creating this high frequency emotion, not of love, but of hate. And you're right, this is why we see children spiraling into this repeated behavior, because they feel something. That's not what we want to feel if we're testing AI against those virtues of free will and goodness. I really like the way you've said that. And a lot of the work we do in sophrology is about values and understanding from within what my value set is. Of course, this is very much linked to our spiritual inheritance. Where's that come from? Which also then informs our financial decision making. So I'm going to segue towards money as well, if you don't mind.
No.
I'm very excited at the moment. I've always worked with founders and entrepreneurs, but I'm very excited now to be working with many more female investors. Now, the research that I've done, and this is nowhere near as deep as yours, alludes to the fact that all financial decision making is based on emotions and experiences.
Yes.
That is correct, but can you please tell us more? Because I know there will be people listening to this saying, absolutely, it's not, Lindsay. It's based on what my analyst did in the office and my own intuition. Of course, there's the link. So over to you on that one.
Thank you. Actually, we know that there's so much research done in behavioral economics and heuristics decision-making theories with mainly Professor Kahneman, Nobel Prize of Economics, on system 1 and system 2 of decision-making. System 1, that it's the intuitive one, that it's very fast and it's based exactly on emotions and intuitions. And system 2, that it is rational, that it's evaluating the pros and the cons and then taking. But in reality, it shows that we in most of the cases, like more than 90%, we take decisions based on system 1 and not on system 2. So, and surprisingly, actually, the research by Professor Fair, which is a Swiss professor here in the University of Zurich, it says that actually these decisions, system 1, are on average more efficient and more accurate than those on system 2. So there's something on the intuitive side that it's right. It has a little bit higher percentage of error than the other, but considering the time and the cost of the system 2, system 1, it's still the best. And that's why I think nature finally it is. I am very much on evolutionary economics. I do think that our evolution has an important factor to say in how we take decisions. So yes, people take decisions based on their values and on what they make meaning, in fact, because humans are meaning-making creatures. And most of the time, they take decisions that make meaning for them, that have meaning for them. And I'm privileged to work with impact investors or investors, ETF investors that really based, if not on a formal side, said, oh, this is faith-based investment. There are a lot in the Catholic side. I work with and was invited in the meetings of Catholic investors, or in the big Protestant family side with the faith-driven investors and faith-driven entrepreneurs. They are people who are ready to put their money where their mouth is, really. And that's absolutely impressive. Of course, here we might say, but what's the point? They often see this kind of investment like to assume some risk, considering that it's less profitable, there is less return of investment than a classical investment. And the data shows again that this is a myth. No, absolutely not. People who invest based on their faith values have actually higher return than classical investors. That is was shown, that this is data shown. It's not only self-fulfilling, prophecy. No, this is data that shows that. So you have like a double benefit. You have a higher return on investment, but also a higher satisfaction for these investors, that they really do good, they really change, and the money that it's used to change to the betterment of communities. I have wrote a paper in a chapter in a book. Let's talk about human. Let's talk about human. Let's talk about money, or let's talk about money. Let's talk about human. I don't remember exactly, but that was the idea. That means you can't talk about money without talking about humans and what they want, what is their dream, and what is their meaning of life. And the opposite, you can't talk about human beings without talking about money, because money is an important part of our lives. That always has been like that, and now even more.
Absolutely. I think this is a fascinating topic. And it's also extremely interesting when you talk about the investment space, and especially when you start talking about sort of wealth investment or affluent investors and their purpose in life, because we know that money doesn't make you happy. And we've got data to prove that as well. Can I go back to something you just said? Because I think a few people's ears will have just pricked up when they heard you say that we have data to show that faith-based investment is more lucrative than a non-faith-based investment. Can you tell us a bit more about that data? Because, of course, we know that's true. And again, Dr. Lisa Miller shows all sorts of interesting things there.
Yeah, but most of the time it is because these investments are impact investment. When you have an impact investment, you have a higher control, on the way the money it's invested. And it is now what we call a real collaboration between the investors and the investee. So because you have two strategies, either you divest from sectors and industry you consider are not aligned with your faith, and that's called a negative screening. That means you exclude those activities. Either you do a positive screening. That means you choose those sectors of activities where they are already aligned with the faith. But I think the most creative and the most interesting are those where you are not aligned with those sectors and activities, but you are willing to work with them. So at medium term, they become aligned. Because if you always invest only on those who are already aligned, I don't see it's good. We need to do that. But you do not really change the other side, which is the largest side, because faith-based aligned investment, it's less than 1% of total assets under management. And one of the things I said to faith-based investor, I said, avoid to become a sect, like a marginal. You have to become the center, the trend, not an alternative. If you are an alternative, that's already it's a loss for the market. But if you want to really have an impact on the market, you have to become trendy, to become the core, the leader, the driver of that. And this is how you do when you engage in sectors that are not aligned, that may be contradictory with your values, but you say, okay, I will not divest, but I will work with you to improve and at a midterm to change. So those activities who are not aligned, we get rid of, and we introduce activities that are aligned with our faith. This is why you have so much impact, because you change, in fact, this is something, it's related to the ownership, when you just buy and sell action, whatever stocks, you do not really have responsibility, When you are an owner, a real owner, that's changing completely the responsibility. It should be in all. For me, any investment, it's a responsibility. But if we talk from a technical point of view, when you get ownership enough in the size to have an impact and to change that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, there's a difference, isn't there, between trading and investing? But your point there is the fact that the collaboration in the investment, because it is faith-based or it's an impact investment, is what makes the difference. It's the collaboration, the community engagement that is the added dimension to just trading numbers. Yes. Can I ask the question I think is also on a lot of people's minds now, who are now thinking, oh yeah, this sounds really great. but I actually don't know what my faith is or what I've got faith in apart from myself. Has that come up in conversation, and what do you say?
Yeah, many people. But I think every human being I met has at a certain point the consciousness that his, her destiny are beyond the physical person in this life. And even those that, when I say beyond, they want to do something that it's meaningful, engage in something that it's beyond themselves. I never met a human being who said, oh, the only thing I really want is to be rich and to be, no. Even those who want that, at a certain point, they said, I want something that it's meaningful for me, So I believe this is it. This is, if you want, the source of that feeling that I want to engage in something that's beyond me. And this is what I call spirituality, the real, because it transcends your person, your own person and ego, and it connects with the universe, whatever we consider this. It might be the community, it might be the family, but anyway, it is out of the pure ego, and the pure ego. And I met people like that, and I said the most important thing is to be aligned within yourself with the values. I met people like that, and even when you're a person of faith, it doesn't replace that feeling that you need to be aligned with your values, whatever is the foundation of those values, or that project, right? Or that feeling who you are, who you want to become. We all search for ourselves,
And I love to use the words anointing and appointing, because if we look at what we've been anointed with, like you say, those gifts and talents, and then we look where we've been appointed to work, this isn't really a choice. It's I'm made like me and you're made like you. I didn't choose that. I didn't choose to turn up in this world, in this body, in this shape, with this personality.
Yes.
Okay, there's some nature and some nurture, but here's an anointing. And what am I going to do with it? Where's the appointing? And I think that's where the faith part comes in. Okay, so how do you believe that happened?
Yeah,
There must be something bigger than you.
I can tell you just personally. So I did banking and finance and economics. I loved mathematics and philosophy. But I recognized I wanted to be successful. I grew up in the communism, in the dictatorship, a very poor worker family. My mom was illiterate and father had only 4 classes. So the goal was to go as far as possible. That was very simple. You go as far as possible. And as I love mathematics and philosophy and the economics, finally I said, I will do economics. And my dream was to become a successful banker. Hence, at 27 years old, I was already a senior executive in banking, And then I realized that, and this is it, and that's all. I could actually kind of picture my life as a movie, but forward, not backward. The next 40 years, yes, becoming director of the bank, maybe president, and so what? I mean, suddenly everything became senseless. For everything I worked for, money, social prestige, and everything became senseless. And here I went back to my deep faith, which I received from the hermits, which I never cut off with the faith, if you want, but it was a moment when from my own will, I chose that I want a life aligned with God. That was something that was really like a necessity. It was not something nice to have and it's good to be spiritual. No, in that emptiness, while I was on the top, 27 years old, what would you like better? You're senior executive in a bank. You own your own apartment. You have your own family. You have everything you wanted. And then it's the emptiness in front for the next 40 years. And that I had what we can call a conversion while being, a conversion to my own faith. But I read a lot of, and I still do reading of religion and spirituality from all religion and spiritualities. Because then you see the riches of the human mind, the human soul. And I said, my God, humanity is so beautiful and we limit so much. And life becomes very beautiful when you do that. And then you meet those people. I met with people from other religions, in our spirituality, and you want to understand them. So yes, it couldn't be more beautiful life now with God than without.
I think that could be a whole other podcast in itself, because you just described what I see happen in my work constantly. I have everything. What's next? And my own experience is very similar in a way that, what is next? Because this word meaningless, and I know we hear it in the book of Job all the time, meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. And when we really understand that emptiness, and then we go out and look within for our own soul and our own values, and therefore our own creation, which is something bigger than us. where do we go? Well, hopefully we all come to a place of spiritual awakening and then faith, because yes, where's the source and what is it we're aligning ourselves to?
Beautiful, you said. Thank you. Very, very beautifully.
I'm so excited to talk about this because I'm absolutely totally dedicated to sharing the fact that if you operate within your life with purpose and passion, you will protect yourself from burnout. And we know, again, Lisa Miller's research here is incredible, but also for young people, we're not sharing our heritage with the next generation, and we're in this weird cashless society. So they're growing up I think slightly unanchored. Very often. If I say to young people, you know, what faith do you have? And they look at you blankly. Do you mean religion? I'm like, well, no, what have you got faith in? Because if I had faith in myself, well, goodness, that would have gone very badly because I'd be dead a long time ago. I'm not always the most reliable person, certainly not the center of the universe. There's something much bigger than me out there.
I love how you say that, because actually that was one of my first comments, which I had 27 years ago when I moved to Paris and Switzerland. I realized that in the Western societies, there's a generation that didn't do the work of transmitting the values. And I would say it's my generation, but in the Western society, they didn't do that. And maybe their parents, I don't know exactly, I have to figure out. But anyway, there's a generation that didn't do the transmission of values, and not only values per se, but what means to value a value, to have values in life, to have meaning, to have something. And I think that we are still collecting the consequences of this missing. And you're right to say that now, actually, we not only was the first generation, but now the second one, because they didn't receive it themselves. But what I am quite happily surprised is that the very young and new, they feel so badly the lack of meaning, of consistency in their life, that they are going back to search for themselves for spirituality. I see that.
Yes, and I hope that they're also going back to look at their inheritance. And some advice I got given is never discount or reject your inheritance. Understand where you came from and now understand where you're going. And that was transformational in my thinking, because when I really understood it and I looked back, actually through a couple of generations of unchurched family, I began to see a pattern, and then I saw this revival. Gosh, what a responsibility it is now to speak about this with people like you. If people would like to talk more to you, where is the best place to find you? The website, of course, is www.davoshouseofgod.com, I believe. Tell me I've got that right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Good. And the links will be linked. And where else can they contact you?
There is an email address, contact@davoshouseofgod.com. Do not hesitate to use it. It's my PA and myself that have access to this email address. Otherwise, on LinkedIn, do not hesitate. I'm open for DM. Connect with me, follow me without any email or everything. Myself, I follow a lot of people, so I will follow you back for sure, because I like to learn. And I think this is the final message I would say. If House of God is there, it's because we need to learn from each other.
That's a beautiful way to end this conversation. Please share this episode as widely as you can. Please come back and ask us questions, because we want to learn in collaboration. Dr. Nico and I are not into lecturing anybody. I think we just want to share our own experiences and tie those together with others, not only previous generations, but future generations and present. And let's see where we can go with this incredibly valuable conversation about faith, religion, and spirituality, both in economics and the wider world, for the flourishing of human capacities now and forevermore. Until next time, Dr. Nico, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you so much.